Sarah Jenkins stood at the entrance of Atlanta Community Center, adjusting her navy blue volunteer badge. It was her first day volunteering after her regular nursing shifts at Atlanta General Hospital. She wanted to make a good impression. The community center had recently started a program to help disabled individuals learn computer skills, and as someone who believed in giving back, Sarah had immediately signed up. The center's hallways were bright and welcoming, filled with the sound of chatter and laughter. As Sarah walked toward room 205, where she was assigned, her rubber-soled shoes squeaked against the freshly waxed floor. She couldn't help but smile at the colorful motivational posters lining the walls. "You must be Sarah," a friendly voice called out. An older woman with silver hair approached her. "I'm Martha, the program coordinator. We're so glad to have another volunteer. Come, let me introduce you to your first student." Martha led Sarah to a spacious room filled with computers. Near the window sat a man in a wheelchair, his fingers moving swiftly across a keyboard. Even from behind, Sarah could tell he had broad shoulders and carried himself with confidence despite his seated position. "Michael," Martha called out, "your instructor is here." The wheelchair turned around smoothly, and Sarah found herself looking into the warmest brown eyes she'd ever seen. Michael Thompson had a strong jawline, kind eyes, and a smile that immediately put her at ease. He wore a crisp blue button-down shirt and dark slacks, looking more like a business executive than a student. "Hello," Michael said, extending his hand. "I'm Michael Thompson, though I guess you already heard that." His handshake was firm and friendly. Sarah noticed how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "I'm Sarah Jenkins. I'll be helping you with the basic computer course." Michael chuckled, and Sarah wondered if she'd said something funny. Martha, who was still standing nearby, smiled knowingly. "Sarah," Martha said, "Michael isn't exactly a beginner. He's actually here to help us develop a more advanced curriculum for our students. He's a tech entrepreneur who specializes in adaptive technology for disabled individuals." Sarah felt her cheeks grow warm with embarrassment. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I just assumed." "No need to apologize," Michael said kindly. "I actually requested a partner from the volunteer program to help me understand how to better teach beginners. Your nursing background could be really valuable in understanding what our students need." As Martha left them to talk, Sarah learned that Michael had been in a wheelchair since a childhood accident at age 10. Instead of letting it limit him, he channeled his energy into technology, eventually starting his own company that developed tools to help disabled people lead more independent lives. "The trick is making technology that's both helpful and affordable," Michael explained, showing Sarah some of his company's projects on his laptop. "Not everyone can afford the fancy stuff." Sarah found herself drawn into the conversation. She shared stories about her patients and the challenges they faced. Before they knew it, 2 hours had passed. "I didn't mean to take up your whole evening," Michael said, looking at his watch. "Not at all. This was really interesting," Sarah replied honestly. She had expected to teach basic computer skills, but instead had learned so much about adaptive technology and its impact on people's lives. As they were packing up, Michael hesitated for a moment. "Sarah, would you be interested in being my regular partner for this program? Your insights from nursing could really help shape our curriculum." Sarah smiled, surprised by how much she wanted to say yes. There was something about Michael, his passion for helping others, his intelligence, and his kind eyes, that made her want to know more about him. "I'd like that," she said. "Same time next week?" "It's a date," Michael replied, then quickly added, "I mean, not a date, just, you know what I mean." Sarah laughed, finding his momentary awkwardness endearing. As she watched him skillfully maneuver his wheelchair toward the door, she realized this volunteer program might turn out to be much more interesting than she'd expected. Walking to her car that evening, Sarah couldn't stop smiling. She had come to teach, but had ended up learning instead. Something told her this was just the beginning of an interesting journey, though she had no idea just how life-changing this meeting would turn out to be. Over the next few months, Sarah and Michael's weekly meetings at the community center became the highlight of their schedules. As summer turned to fall, their professional partnership slowly blossomed into something deeper, though neither of them admitted it at first. One rainy Thursday evening, Sarah arrived at the center looking tired after a long shift at the hospital. Michael noticed immediately. "Rough day?" he asked, wheeling closer to where she sat. Sarah sighed, running her hands through her curly black hair. "Lost a patient today, an elderly man. He had no family left." Her voice cracked slightly. Instead of offering empty words of comfort, Michael reached into his bag and pulled out 2 cups of coffee from her favorite cafe. "I had a feeling you might need this today. I remember you mentioned this place makes the best caramel lattes in Atlanta." Sarah was touched that he had remembered such a small detail. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he smiled. "I wanted to." That evening, instead of working on the curriculum, they talked. Michael shared stories about growing up with his disability, how kids would either avoid him or treat him with awkward pity. He told her about the accident, a car crash that had taken his ability to walk but sparked his determination to help others like him. "My parents were amazing," he explained, his eyes distant with memories. "They never let me feel limited. When I couldn't play basketball, they got me into coding camps instead. That changed everything." Sarah found herself sharing too, about growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, about her struggles in nursing school, and about her family's expectations for her to marry a doctor or lawyer. "And instead, here you are, hanging out with a guy in a wheelchair who makes computer games for disabled kids," Michael joked, but Sarah heard the hint of insecurity in his voice. "Here I am," she said firmly, meeting his eyes, "spending time with one of the most brilliant and caring people I've ever met." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Their comfortable routine started expanding beyond the community center. They began meeting for coffee before their sessions, then dinner afterward. Michael showed Sarah his company's office, where she was amazed by the innovative technology his team was developing. "This is incredible," she exclaimed, trying on a virtual reality headset designed to help paralyzed patients experience movement again. "Your mind works in such amazing ways. Want to see something really cool?" Michael asked, leading her to his private workshop. There he showed her prototypes of various devices, from simple adaptive utensils to complex mobility aids. "Each one of these started because someone needed it," he explained. "That elderly woman who couldn't hold her spoon steady? This was for her. The young boy who couldn't play video games with his friends? That controller was for him." Sarah watched him talk about his work, noticing how his whole face lit up with passion. She realized she was falling for him, wheelchair and all, and the thought didn't scare her one bit. Their families had different reactions to their growing relationship. Sarah's mother was concerned, not about Michael's disability, but about how society would treat them as an interracial couple. "Life is already hard enough, baby," her mother said during Sunday dinner. "Are you sure you want to make it harder?" "Mom," Sarah replied, "Michael makes my life easier, not harder. He makes me laugh. He challenges me to think differently, and he cares about helping others as much as I do. Isn't that what matters?" Michael's family welcomed Sarah warmly, though his younger sister pulled her aside one day. "Just be sure about this," she warned. "Michael's been hurt before by people who thought they could handle his disability, but couldn't in the long run." "I'm a nurse," Sarah responded. "I know exactly what I'm getting into. And what I'm getting into is a relationship with a man who amazes me more every day." As fall turned to winter, their connection grew stronger. They faced curious stares and occasional rude comments when out together, but they handled it as they did everything else, as a team. Neither of them knew yet about the incredible surprise that lay in their future, but they were already certain about one thing: they had found something special in each other. 1 year into their relationship, Michael knew Sarah was the one. He spent weeks planning the perfect proposal, wanting it to be as unique and special as their love story. His team at the tech company worked overtime, helping him create something that had never been done before. On a crisp Saturday morning, Michael invited Sarah to his office, claiming he needed her medical opinion on a new virtual reality project. Sarah arrived wearing her favorite red sweater, her curly hair pulled back in a neat bun. "So, what's this mysterious project you need my help with?" she asked, noticing how nervous Michael seemed, his hands fidgeting with his wheelchair controls. "It's easier if I show you," he replied, leading her to the testing room. "We've been working on a new kind of virtual reality experience. Would you try it?" Sarah nodded, curious. Michael carefully placed the VR headset over her eyes and handed her the special gloves that went with it. As soon as the system started, Sarah gasped. She found herself in a perfect virtual recreation of the community center where they first met. Every detail was exactly as she remembered: The squeaky floors, the motivational posters, even the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. "Michael, this is amazing," she exclaimed, turning around in the virtual space. "Keep going," his voice encouraged her. "Walk down the hallway." As she moved through the virtual building, she began seeing memories from their relationship floating in the air like golden photographs. There they were having coffee for the first time, sharing laughs during their volunteer sessions, their first dinner together at the Italian restaurant downtown. Each memory came with Michael's voice sharing what that moment had meant to him. "This was when I first saw your smile," he said as she passed one image. "This was when I realized I was falling in love with you," he narrated at another. The path led her to room 205, where they had first met. When she opened the virtual door, she found herself in a beautiful garden she didn't recognize. The sky was filled with twinkling stars, and floating lanterns illuminated the space. "Take off the headset, Sarah." Michael's voice was soft, full of emotion. When Sarah removed the headset, she blinked in surprise. The testing room had been transformed into the exact garden she had just seen in virtual reality. Real lanterns floated above them, and fairy lights twinkled everywhere. In the center of it all was Michael, holding a small velvet box in his hands. "Sarah Jenkins," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "You came into my life expecting to teach basic computer skills, but instead, you taught me something far more valuable, that love sees no limitations, no differences, no disabilities. You never once made me feel like I was anything less than whole." Tears began forming in Sarah's eyes as Michael continued. "You don't see me as the guy in the wheelchair. You see me as Michael, just Michael. And I see you as Sarah, the most beautiful, compassionate, and incredible woman I've ever known." He opened the velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "I may not be able to get down on one knee, but I can promise you my heart, my devotion, and a lifetime of love. Will you marry me?" Sarah's tears were flowing freely now. She knelt down beside his wheelchair, bringing herself to eye level with him. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times yes." As Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, his team, who had been hiding nearby, burst into applause. Even Sarah's family emerged from their hiding spots. Michael had arranged for them to be there for this special moment. Sarah's mother hugged them both, crying happy tears. "I was wrong," she admitted to Michael. "You're exactly what my daughter needs." Later that evening, as they celebrated with their families, Sarah couldn't stop looking at her ring and the man who had given it to her. She knew some people wouldn't understand their relationship, a black woman and a disabled white man, but she didn't care. They had found something rare and precious in each other. What Sarah didn't know was that Michael had an even bigger surprise planned for their wedding day. As he watched her laughing with his sister, he smiled, keeping his secret safe. The proposal had gone perfectly, but the best was yet to come. The months leading up to the wedding were filled with both excitement and challenges. Sarah and Michael chose a beautiful garden venue that was wheelchair accessible, but they soon discovered that wedding planning came with its own set of unique situations to navigate. One afternoon, during a cake tasting appointment, the baker kept directing all questions to Sarah, acting as if Michael wasn't even there. Sarah noticed Michael's jaw tightening, a sign she knew meant he was upset but trying to hide it. "Actually," Sarah interrupted the baker firmly, "this is Michael's decision. He's the one with the amazing taste in desserts." She squeezed Michael's hand under the table, and he gave her a grateful smile. "You didn't have to do that," Michael said later as they left the bakery. "Yes, I did," Sarah replied. "We're a team. If they can't respect both of us, they don't deserve our business." They found a new baker, one who treated them both with respect and even offered to create a special display that would make cutting the cake together easier for Michael. It was these small acts of kindness that made the difficult moments worthwhile. The dress shopping experience brought its own emotional challenges. While Sarah tried on wedding gowns with her mother and sisters, she overheard two other customers whispering. "Did you hear? She's marrying a man in a wheelchair," one woman said. "Such a shame. She's so pretty." Sarah's sister Monica was ready to confront them, but Sarah stopped her. "Don't," she said, standing tall in a beautiful white gown. "Their small minds can't understand our big love." Meanwhile, Michael was working on a secret project with his medical team. 3 times a week, he would tell Sarah he had late meetings at work, but in reality, he was undergoing intensive physical therapy and testing a groundbreaking exoskeleton technology. The device is responding well, his doctor reported during one session. But remember, we can't guarantee it will work perfectly on the wedding day. I have to try, Michael insisted, sweat dripping from his forehead as he practiced standing. Sarah deserves this moment. One evening, during dinner with both families, Michael's mother raised a sensitive topic. Have you two discussed children? She asked cautiously. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Sarah noticed Michael's hand grip his water glass tighter. We have, Sarah answered confidently, and we know that whether through adoption or other means, we'll have a family when we're ready. Love makes a family, not ability. Michael's mother's eyes filled with tears. You really are perfect for each other, she said softly. As the wedding date grew closer, Sarah noticed Michael seemed more distracted and nervous than usual. She assumed it was just wedding jitters, never suspecting he was preparing a surprise that would change their lives forever. One night, a week before the wedding, they sat in Michael's backyard looking at the stars. Are you having any doubts? He asked suddenly, his voice uncertain. Sarah turned to face him. About marrying you. Not a single one. Even though life might be easier with someone else, someone who could. His voice trailed off. Michael Thompson, Sarah said firmly, let me be very clear. I'm not marrying you despite your disability. I'm marrying you because you're the most amazing man I've ever known. You're brilliant, kind, funny, and you make me a better person. The wheelchair? It's just part of who you are, like my curly hair or my loud laugh. Michael pulled her closer, kissing her softly. He wanted to tell her about the surprise he had planned, about the hours of secret therapy and training, but he held back. In just a few days during their first look, she would understand just how much she had inspired him. The night before their wedding, Sarah's father called her into his study. Baby girl, he said, his voice emotional, I've watched you grow into an incredible woman. Tomorrow, you're marrying a man who sees that too. Your mother and I, we were wrong to doubt this. Love like yours and Michael's, it's rare and precious. Sarah hugged her father tightly, happy tears streaming down her face. Tomorrow, she would become Mrs. Thompson, and she couldn't wait. Little did she know, her wedding day would bring a surprise that would leave everyone speechless. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and beautiful. Sarah sat in the bridal suite of the garden venue, surrounded by her mother, sisters, and bridesmaids. Her wedding dress, a flowing ivory gown with delicate lace details, hung by the window catching the early morning light. Something feels different about today, Sarah's mother said as she helped her daughter with her hair. There's magic in the air. Monica, Sarah's maid of honor, was checking her phone constantly. She seemed nervous, which was unusual for her typically calm sister. Has anyone talked to Michael's side this morning? She asked for the third time. They're all fine, Sarah's other sister Ashley assured her. Why are you so jumpy? Monica quickly changed the subject, but Sarah noticed the strange look that passed between her sisters. Everyone seemed to be acting a bit mysterious today. As the makeup artist worked on Sarah's face, a knock came at the door. It was Martha, the community center coordinator where Sarah and Michael first met. She held a small package in her hands. This is from Michael, Martha said, smiling warmly. He asked me to deliver it personally. Sarah opened the package to find a beautiful pearl bracelet and a note. With trembling hands, she read Michael's words. My dearest Sarah, in a few hours, you'll become my wife, but first, I have a surprise for you during our first look. I've been working on something special for months. Trust me, and keep your heart open. All my love, Michael. What surprise? Sarah asked, looking around at her bridal party. Everyone suddenly became very interested in their bouquets or phones. You'll see, her mother said mysteriously, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Sarah's father came in briefly, took one look at her in her wedding dress, and had to leave the room to compose himself. When he returned, his eyes were red, but his smile was bright. Baby girl, he said, his voice rough with emotion, you look like an angel. Michael is a blessed man. Around noon, Sarah's wedding planner, Lisa, came in looking slightly flustered. Okay, we've got a slight change of plans for the first look, she announced. Instead of the garden gazebo, we're going to use the private courtyard. And, Um, we need an extra 15 minutes to set up. Sarah frowned. Set up what? It's just supposed to be Michael and me, and the photographer. Trust the process, Lisa said with a knowing smile. This is going to be perfect. As the time for the first look approached, Sarah noticed more unusual activity. Michael's doctor arrived, which seemed odd, and several members of his tech company's team were setting up some kind of equipment in the courtyard. What's going on? Sarah asked her sisters. Why is Michael's medical team here? You know Michael, Monica said quickly. He likes to be prepared for everything. Now, let's focus on getting you ready for your big moment. Sarah's heart was beating fast as she prepared to see Michael. She had specifically chosen a dress that would look beautiful with his wheelchair and photos, making sure the length was perfect for sitting next to him. Just before she was due to head to the courtyard, Martha appeared again. Sarah, she said, her eyes twinkling, Michael asked me to tell you something. He said to remember the first day you met, how you assumed he was there to learn basic computer skills, but he surprised you. He says today will be like that, but 1,000,000 times better. Sarah's mother helped adjust her veil one last time. Ready, sweetheart? Ready, Sarah replied, though her stomach was full of butterflies. But why does everyone seem to know something I don't? Her father took her arm, preparing to walk her to the first look location. Some surprises are worth waiting for, he said cryptically. And believe me, baby girl, this one is going to make history. As they approached the courtyard doors, Sarah could hear unusual movements and whispered voices on the other side. Whatever Michael had planned, it was clearly bigger than a typical first look. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and prepared herself for whatever was waiting on the other side of those doors. The heavy wooden doors to the courtyard slowly opened. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The first thing she noticed was that the small courtyard was filled with more people than a typical first look should have. Michael's medical team, his tech company employees, and both their families stood in a semicircle, all holding their breath. But Sarah didn't see Michael's wheelchair anywhere. Where's Michael? She whispered to her father, still holding her arm. Then she heard Michael's voice. I'm right here, Sarah. Sarah looked toward the voice, and the world seemed to stop. There was Michael, but he wasn't sitting in his wheelchair. He was standing. Standing. Tears immediately began streaming down Sarah's face as she watched her fiancé, supported by an elegant, nearly invisible exoskeleton under his tuxedo, take a shaky but determined step toward her. His medical team stood nearby, ready to help if needed, but Michael was doing this on his own. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, her hands covering her mouth. Oh my God. Surprise, Michael said, his voice trembling with emotion as he took another step. This is what I've been working on for the past 6 months. Every late meeting, every delayed date night, I was learning to use this new technology we developed. Sarah couldn't move, couldn't speak. She just watched as the man she loved, the man who had been in a wheelchair since childhood, walked slowly toward her. His steps were careful and measured, but they were real. The exoskeleton responds to his brain signals, one of the tech team members explained softly. Michael helped design it himself. He's been practicing for hours every day. When Michael finally reached her, they were both crying. He stood straight and tall, nearly a foot taller than Sarah in her heels. For the first time, they could look into each other's eyes while standing. I wanted to stand next to you as you become my wife, Michael said, reaching out to wipe away her tears. I wanted to dance with you at our reception. I wanted to show you that nothing is impossible with you by my side. Sarah touched his face with trembling hands. You did all this? For me? Michael smiled through his own tears. For us. You never saw my disability as a limitation. You loved me exactly as I was. But you also made me want to push myself further than I ever thought possible. The photographer was capturing every moment, though no one really noticed. Everyone in the courtyard was crying, watching this miracle unfold. Can I? Sarah gestured to the exoskeleton, barely visible under his tuxedo. It's a breakthrough in biomedical engineering, Michael explained. It won't let me walk all the time, the battery life is limited, and it requires a lot of energy to use. But for special moments like today, it gives me the freedom to stand and walk. Sarah's father stepped forward, tears in his eyes. You truly are a remarkable man, Michael. The chair will always be part of my life, Michael continued, holding Sarah's hands. But now I have choices, and my first choice is to stand beside you as we say our vows. Sarah finally found her voice again. Michael Thompson, just when I think I couldn't love you more, you do something like this. But you know what? She squeezed his hands. Standing or sitting, walking or rolling, you're the man I want to spend my life with. Michael leaned down, and kissed her softly. The courtyard erupted in applause and cheers. Should we practice our first dance while I'm up here? Michael asked with a grin. Sarah laughed through her tears. You're going to make me ruin my makeup. You've never looked more beautiful, he said, carefully taking her in his arms. As they swayed gently together, surrounded by their loved ones in that sunlit courtyard, Sarah realized that this was more than just a surprise. It was a testament to love's power to inspire, to drive innovation, and to make the impossible possible. The first look had turned into something far more momentous than anyone could have imagined, except for Michael, who had held this dream in his heart from the moment he decided to propose. And this was just the beginning of their wedding day. Word of Michael's surprise spread quickly through the wedding venue. By the time the ceremony was about to begin, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. The garden setting was perfect. White chairs lined a flower-strewn aisle, and an arch of roses stood at the altar. Michael's wheelchair was positioned discreetly near the altar, ready if he needed it. Though the exoskeleton was a marvel of technology, everyone understood that standing for the entire ceremony might be too challenging. But Michael was determined to stand for the most important parts. Are you sure about this? His best man whispered as they took their places. I've never been more sure of anything, Michael replied, standing tall at the altar. He had practiced for this moment countless times, building up his stamina week after week. The music began, and the bridal party started their procession. Monica walked down first, followed by Ashley and the other bridesmaids. Each of them beamed at Michael as they took their places, proud to be part of this extraordinary day. Then the wedding march started playing, and everyone rose. Sarah appeared at the entrance with her father, and the collective gasp from the guests was audible. She looked radiant in her ivory gown, but it was her smile that lit up the entire garden. As Sarah walked down the aisle, her eyes never left Michael's. The sight of him standing there, waiting for her, made fresh tears spring to her eyes. Her father patted her hand gently as they walked. When they reached the altar, Sarah's father hugged her tightly, then turned to Michael. Instead of just shaking his hand as planned, he pulled Michael into a warm embrace. Thank you for loving my daughter so completely, he whispered. The minister smiled at the couple before beginning the ceremony. We are gathered here today to witness not just a marriage, but a testament to the power of love, determination, and the human spirit. Michael and Sarah had written their own vows. Sarah went first, her voice strong despite her tears. Michael, when we first met, I thought I was there to teach you. Instead, you taught me more about love, courage, and determination than I ever imagined possible. You've shown me that limitations only exist if we accept them. I promise to be your partner in all things, to face every challenge by your side, and to love you more each day than the day before. Then it was Michael's turn. His legs were getting tired, but his voice was steady. Sarah, you saw me for who I am, not what I couldn't do. Your love gave me the strength to attempt what everyone said was impossible. I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of that love. Whether I'm standing or sitting, walking or rolling, my heart will always rise to meet yours. You're my miracle, my inspiration, and my future. The exchange of rings was especially poignant. When Sarah slipped the ring onto Michael's finger, their hands trembled together. When Michael placed Sarah's ring on her finger, he did so standing on his own 2 feet, something he had dreamed of doing since he was 10 years old. By the power vested in me, the minister said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Michael pulled Sarah close, and as their lips met, the garden erupted in cheers and applause. Several news photographers who had gotten wind of the story captured the moment, a moment that would soon inspire millions around the world. After the kiss, Michael sat down in his wheelchair, exhausted but happy. Sarah immediately sat in his lap, something they had practiced many times, and he wheeled them back down the aisle as husband and wife. Was it everything you hoped for? Sarah whispered as they headed toward the reception. It was more, Michael replied, looking up at his new wife. But the best part wasn't standing up. The best part was promising to spend my life with you. As they entered the reception area, the DJ announced, Ladies and gentlemen, For the first time anywhere, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding as Michael and Sarah made their entrance. Their love story had already touched so many hearts, but the real journey was just beginning. Their wedding day had shown everyone that with love, innovation, and determination, anything was possible. And the surprises weren't over yet. Michael had one more special moment planned for their first dance. The wedding reception was in full swing, with laughter and music filling the elegant ballroom. Michael and Sarah sat at their sweetheart table, watching their families and friends celebrate. The exoskeleton was recharging. Michael had saved just enough power for one more special moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced, "it's time for the couple's first dance." The crowd gathered around the dance floor, forming a circle. Michael's medical team moved into their practice positions, ready to assist if needed. Sarah stood in the center of the dance floor, waiting as Michael's best man helped him stand one final time. The opening notes of "At Last" by Etta James filled the room. Michael walked slowly to his bride, each step purposeful and strong. When he reached her, he took her in his arms, and they began to sway to the music. "I dreamed of this since I was 10 years old," Michael whispered in her ear as they danced. "Not just of dancing at my wedding, but of finding someone who would make me want to try the impossible." Sarah laid her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "This isn't the end of our story, is it?" she asked softly. "You're going to keep surprising me." "The exoskeleton prototype is just the beginning," Michael replied. "We're already working on making it more efficient, more affordable. Think of how many lives we could change." As they danced, phones recorded the moment and social media lit up with their story. By morning, videos of their wedding would go viral, inspiring millions and drawing attention to the possibilities of adaptive technology. When the song ended, Michael returned to his wheelchair to thunderous applause. But instead of sitting down, he grabbed the microphone. "Today has been magical," he said, "but I want everyone to understand something. Yes, standing and walking today was incredible, but my wheelchair is not my enemy. It's part of who I am, and it will always be part of our life together. Sarah fell in love with me, not with my ability or inability to walk." Sarah took the microphone next, her eyes shining. "And I want everyone to know that love doesn't see limitations. It sees possibilities. Michael and I don't have a perfect life, we have a real one, and that's even better." The party continued late into the night. Michael alternated between his wheelchair and standing for short periods, dancing with his mother, sister, and new mother-in-law. Sarah danced with everyone, but her eyes always returned to her husband, her smile radiant with joy. 1 month after the wedding, Michael's company announced a breakthrough in adaptive technology. The exoskeleton project, inspired by his wedding day, would become available to rehabilitation centers across the country. Sarah left her nursing job to join Michael's company as their medical consultant, helping to develop more innovations for people with disabilities. Their wedding video reached millions of views online, but more importantly, it reached people who needed hope. Letters poured in from around the world, from couples facing similar challenges, from parents of disabled children, from people who had given up on love. On their first anniversary, Sarah and Michael sat in their backyard, looking at the stars just like they had done the night before their wedding. "Any regrets?" Michael asked, holding his wife's hand. Sarah smiled, touching her stomach gently. "Only that we can't tell them yet," she said, referring to the baby they had just learned was on the way. They had decided to wait until the 3rd month to share their news. Michael's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Our child will never see limitations," he said firmly. "They'll grow up knowing that love makes anything possible." As they sat together under the stars, Sarah thought about their journey. From that first meeting at the community center to this moment. Their story had inspired thousands, but for them, it was simply love, pure and true. "Ready for our next adventure?" Sarah asked, squeezing his hand. "With you," Michael smiled, pulling her close. "Always." Their story became a symbol of hope, proving that true love knows no boundaries. But for Sarah and Michael, it was just the beginning. They had many more chapters to write together, many more barriers to break, and many more dreams to chase, not as a disabled man and his wife, but as two people who had found in each other the strength to defy expectations and the courage to believe in miracles. The end.